Introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Kim Page, and I'm the hatchery manager at Bowers Hatchery here in Palacios, Texas. It's a brand new hatchery, and we're up and running and making post larvae. From start to finish, well, the first thing you need is a place to do this, and that's something that's kind of amazing that we were able to, or Bowers was able to get done in 6 months. They went from empty ground space to an up and running hatchery. So hatchery requires a lot of special features. It needs special water treatment, it needs chilling, it needs heating, it needs sort of unusual tanks. You need the brood stock, so you need the breeders, the mamas and the dads, the males and females that you make larvae from. So those we get from, there's actually brood stock producers that provide those. There's several different ones throughout the world, and we negotiated, and we're using 2 different types, and these are sort of genetically selected animals, and they're pathogen free, and you choose these very carefully. You also need to raise the food, or to get the food ready. So the larvae eat algae. I've showed you some of the algae systems already. So algae is a very important part of it, and it takes quite a bit of time and preparation. Algae has to be done very carefully and very cleanly. It's a very particular type of algae, and so that's another component. So you need an area that you raise algae in. There's some other components to the food. We also raise some Artemia, which are brine shrimp, which are actually we get them from the Great Salt Lake. And they're also, we hatch them every day, and they're also food for when the larvae become more carnivorous. So we need water for that, and in this case we chose to get water off of a boat. A boat drives offshore and gets good water for hatchery. Hatchery needs very salty, or it needs sea salt, and it needs to be clean, and both of those are best acquired offshore, where shrimp larvae normally are spawned and hatched. So we also went to that, and that's kind of a novel aspect of what this farm does. Basically, we take their eggs, and then we hatch the eggs, and then we use those larvae and put them in to our larval rearing tank. So it's a process where you remove the females and put them in one tank, and then take the eggs and put them in another tank, and then hatch the eggs, and then the hatched larvae you put in another tank. So it's a process, but at each one of those steps you want to wash the eggs and wash the larvae, make sure everything's clean, and then you transfer them to larval rearing, where you begin to grow them. Somewhere around like 500,000 eggs, or 400,000 or something like that. And of those, depends on condition, but maybe a half of them, or as many as 80% of them will hatch. So that leaves you with 200,000 or 300,000 nauplii larvae. Well, the whole process in the hatchery takes almost 3 weeks, something like that. It's very dynamic because they grow very fast. The females are mated in the evening, and already that next morning the eggs hatch. And over the next 10 days, they go through their larval stages. So the larval stages they don't look very much like shrimp. They, like many crustaceans, they have sort of 3 main stages, and they Like I said, none of them really resemble a shrimp so much. And then they turn into post-larvae after almost 10 days. And then we hold them for another 10 days so that they're really ready to go out to the farm. So the whole thing is maybe 20 days, something like that. There's some, I could talk about some other things that we've done over there. It's a little bit off the subject, but this hatchery, it's kind of new and different than a lot of other hatcheries. We've done things that are very dynamic. Things like, the growing of algae. So most people grow algae under using natural sunlight and more or less outside, and there's good things about that. Sunlight is actually very good for growing algae, but when it's foggy, like it is a lot around here, it gets to be unreliable. So the system that we developed has using a lot of LED lights, which is in itself is kind of a novelty for growing algae. You can't find anybody who's done this before. And through some, manipulations and whatever, we're actually doing quite well with growing algae on LED lights. So that's kind of a big innovative thing. Using the boat is also a kind of a novelty where people would think that's not capable, you can't do that, but part of it is because the hatchery is located right next to the dock, so that part of it, getting it off the boat to the hatchery, is a direct transfer. But still, getting a boat that can carry enough water, that can go out enough times, is kind of a novelty, but it's helped the hatchery a lot. It's very good water that he brings back to us, so that's kind of a good thing. There's an awful lot about the water treatment. We said, even though we're getting good water from outside, there's still, we want to be certain about our water. So we have a pretty elaborate water treatment system. Maybe there'll be some photos of it. And there's, 3 different steps, and in each one of those steps there's maybe 3 or 4 different filtration systems, and you want to make sure the water is sterilized. You want to remove any kind of debris. You want to heat it to the right temperature. You want to just when you're holding it, you want to make sure it's in good shape, and then transferring it to the next one. All those things, our water treatment is pretty elaborate, and we do, it's a big part of what we do there, and the way we do it and how we do it and how it got put together is novel compared to a lot of different kinds of systems. Yeah. Keeping things clean is what it's all about in the hatchery. So you saw many of the places are, almost sterile. Some of the conditions that we use them, cleaning them up and cleaning tanks. So that's a big part of hatcheries is cleaning also. So that's kind of part. But then we send them out to you can put maybe on a trailer. We've got a nice trailer that can haul maybe 5 million animals. So just yesterday, should have been here yesterday, but just yesterday we moved out 5 million, and right now it's too cold to put them in the farm, so we're put them in the nursery there, which is a sort of a building that's protected and warm. And then probably when the weather gets just a little bit better, we're going to start moving them directly into the ponds. But they only have to be about, like I said, about 20 days old from egg, and then they're ready to fend for themselves out in the ponds. We definitely have sort of a sustainable attitude about how, to keep this business going. And, probably a lot depends, one day maybe we'll raise our own brood stock. That's a little bit of a tricky business because there's a lot of sort of genetic genetic selection involved, and you want to have the right stocks that grow in the right situation. One day maybe we'll get that fancy. Right now we rely on others.